She was 12 feet up in a 300-year-old oak tree with kitchen shears in one hand and her pride choking her silent when gravity made its decision. Henry Carter stepped beneath her without being asked, arms steady, voice calm. "Jump," he said. "I'll catch you." She was a lawyer who'd never needed saving, a woman who climbed every ladder alone, but the branch was cracking and the ground was hard, and something in his eyes made her let go. He caught her like she weighed nothing, and for the first time in years she didn't have to land alone. If you want to see how a single father carpenter became the only person she ever trusted to catch her, stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The September sun hung low over the Portland suburb of Cedar Mill when Henry Carter's palm sander went quiet. Not because he'd finished the bookshelf commission spread across his garage workbench, but because something in his peripheral vision didn't belong. He set the tool down carefully, pulled his safety glasses off, and squinted toward the property line where the massive white oak tree stood like a sentinel between his modest ranch house and the sleek modern construction next door. There was a woman in the tree, not a teenager, not a utility worker, his neighbor. The one who wore tailored blazers at 7 in the morning and drove a German sedan that cost more than his annual income. The one whose heels clicked against pavement with the precision of a metronome. The one who'd lived next door for 8 months and had spoken to him exactly 3 times, each conversation lasting under 30 seconds. She was balanced precariously on a branch about 12 feet up, one hand gripping the trunk, the other wielding what appeared to be kitchen shears. Her cream blouse had a streak of bark across the shoulder. Her dark hair, usually pulled into a ruthless bun, had come partially loose. Henry walked across his lawn slowly, stopping beneath the oak's canopy. "Afternoon." She didn't look down immediately. When she did, her expression carried the particular irritation of someone caught doing something they'd convinced themselves was reasonable. "Afternoon." "Need help?" "I'm fine." "You're 12 feet up a tree with kitchen scissors." "Kitchen shears," she corrected, as if the distinction mattered. "And I'm handling it." Henry crossed his arms, studying the situation. The branch she was trying to cut extended over her property, but the tree itself sat squarely on the boundary line. Ancient, thick-trunked, with leaves just beginning to turn gold. "Why are you cutting that branch?" "HOA complaint. Apparently it's encroaching on the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood." Her tone could have stripped paint. "They gave me 2 weeks to handle it or face fines." "So you climbed up there yourself?" "The tree service wanted $300 and couldn't come for 10 days. She repositioned her grip and the branch creaked. "I can cut one branch. That branch is 8 inches thick. Those shears won't get through it, and even if they did, you'd drop it on your garage." "I appreciate your concern, but I've got it under control." The branch creaked again, louder this time. A small crack appeared where it met the trunk. Henry's voice stayed level. "Ma'am, that branch is about to make your decision for you." She finally looked down at him properly, and he saw it then. The flash of genuine fear beneath the armor of competence. She was stuck, too proud to ask for help, too smart not to know she was in trouble. "I'm going to position myself under you," Henry said calmly. "When that branch goes, jump toward me. I'll catch you." "That's not necessary." The crack widened with a sound like a rifle shot. "Jump," Henry said, bracing his stance. "Now." For a woman who'd spent her entire adult life making calculated decisions, this one came down to physics and trust. She dropped the shears pushed off from the trunk and fell. Henry caught her at ribcage height, absorbing the impact through his legs and core. She wasn't heavy, but momentum was momentum. He took 2 steps back to stabilize, arms locked around her waist, and then set her down on solid ground as the branch gave a final groan, but held. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and sharp, mixed with tree sap and fear sweat. Her hands were still gripped on his shoulders. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She stepped back quickly, smoothing her blouse, rebuilding the walls in real time. "Yes, thank you. That branch needs to come down properly. I'll handle it tomorrow." "You don't need to, It's not a favor," Henry interrupted gently. "That tree's on the property line. Means it's partly mine. I'll take care of it." She studied him for a long moment, this broad-shouldered man in a sawdust-covered flannel and work jeans, and seemed to recalibrate something internal. I'm Olivia Bennett. Henry Carter. I know, your son plays in your backyard sometimes. He's enthusiastic. Henry smiled slightly. That's one word for it. Lucas is 6. Volume control isn't his strong suit yet. He seems happy. That's the goal. Henry glanced back at his garage where the bookshelf waited. I should get back to work, but stay out of that tree, yeah? Next time you might not have someone underneath. Olivia's jaw tightened slightly. I don't usually need someone underneath. Everybody does sometimes. Henry turned toward his house, then paused. For what it's worth, the HOA is full of it. That tree was here before this neighborhood existed. They can't make you cut it. They have architectural covenants. They have opinions. Big difference. He raised a hand in a casual wave. Have a good evening, Ms. Bennett. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing alone under the oak tree with bark on her blouse and the uncomfortable feeling that she'd just been seen in a way she didn't permit. Inside his house, Henry found Lucas sprawled on the living room floor with colored pencils scattered around him like shrapnel. His son looked up with a gap-toothed grin. Dad! I drew the Millennium Falcon! Henry crouched beside him, studying the lopsided spacecraft that looked more like an angry potato. That's outstanding, buddy. You got the cockpit on the right side and everything. Did you see the lady in the tree? I did. Was she stuck? Yeah? Did you save her? Henry considered this. I caught her when she jumped. Like a superhero? Like someone who was standing in the right place. Henry ruffled his son's hair. You wash your hands before dinner? Mostly. Go do it completely. Lucas scrambled up and thundered toward the bathroom. Henry stood slowly, his lower back reminding him he wasn't 25 anymore, and walked to the kitchen window that overlooked Olivia Bennett's property. Her house was all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of architecture that cost serious money and announced serious ambition. Through the glass, he could see her moving through her living room, still in her work clothes, phone pressed to her ear. He'd noticed her before, of course. Hard not to. She was beautiful in that intimidating way that made men straighten their posture unconsciously. But more than that, she moved through the world like someone who'd learned early that showing weakness was dangerous. He recognized it because he'd seen it in the mirror during the 2 years after his wife died. That particular kind of armor you build when you can't afford to fall apart. The difference was, he'd had Lucas to force him back into softness. He wondered what Olivia Bennett had. The next morning, Henry was up at 6. Lucas wouldn't wake for another hour, so he pulled on his boots and walked to the property line with his climbing gear and a pole saw. The oak tree was magnificent up close, trunk thick as a compact car, bark deeply furrowed with age. He'd researched it once. White oaks in Oregon could live 400 years. This one had probably been a sapling when Lewis and Clark were still mapping the territory. He was setting up his ladder when Olivia's back door opened. She emerged in running clothes, her hair pulled back, expression carefully neutral. You're up early. Habit. Military before this. He secured the ladder base. Figured I'd handle this before it gets hot. I can pay you. Nope. Henry. Ms. Bennett, I'm doing this because it needs doing, and I know how. That's it. He started climbing, rope and harness secure. You want to help? Make sure that ladder doesn't shift. She moved to the ladder without argument, hands gripping the rails. Henry ascended into the canopy, working methodically. The problem branch was dead, had been for probably 2 seasons based on the bark beetle damage. It needed to come down regardless of what the HOA thought, but he could take it in sections, drop it safely, and leave the tree stronger. You do this professionally? Olivia called up. Carpentry's my job. Trees are just related skills. He made the first cut, lowering a section on a rope. But I grew up on a farm. You learn to handle what needs handling. Where? Eastern Oregon, outside Pendleton, middle of nowhere. What brought you here? Henry worked quietly for a moment, considering how much to share with someone who was essentially a stranger. But there was something about being 12 feet up in a tree that made conversation feel less exposed. My wife was from Portland. We moved here when she got a teaching position. Then she got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Died when Lucas was 2. The silence below him felt different, heavier. "I'm sorry," Olivia said finally. "Me too." He lowered another section. But Lucas needed stability, and she'd loved this neighborhood. So we stayed. That must be hard, raising him alone. Some days more than others, but he's worth every second. Henry paused his cutting. "You got family around here?" "No, I grew up in California, Bay Area. Moved here for work 3 years ago." "What do you do?" "Corporate law, mergers and acquisitions mostly." Henry whistled low. "So you're terrifying professionally, not just recreationally." He heard her laugh, actually laugh, for the first time. It sounded rusty, like she didn't use it often. Something like that. They worked in companionable quiet after that, Henry cutting and lowering, Olivia stabilizing and moving sections to the curb. By the time he climbed down, his shirt was soaked through, and the sun had climbed high enough to make the work uncomfortable. The oak looked better, though. Balanced, healthy, no longer dropping dead weight on her garage. Olivia stood back, surveying the work. "Thank you, seriously." "No problem." Henry coiled his rope. "But you should know that HOA complaints probably not going away. They get something in their head. They're like dogs with a bone." "Let them try." Her expression hardened into something sharp and legal. "I've dealt with worse than a neighborhood board on a power trip." Henry believed it. "Well, if they give you trouble, let me know. I've got the property survey in my files. This tree's technically on both our lots. They can't force removal without both owners agreeing." She looked at him curiously. "You researched property law?" "I research whatever I need to know." He hefted his gear. "That's how you protect what matters." Something shifted in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or respect. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone simpler, I guess." Henry smiled slightly. "Simple and stupid aren't the same thing, Ms. Bennett." "Olivia," she corrected. "If you're going to save me from trees, you should probably use my first name." "Fair enough. But I didn't save you. Just gave you a safe place to land." He walked back to his house before she could respond, leaving her standing under the oak tree again, but this time on solid ground, with a view she hadn't noticed before. 3 days later, an envelope appeared in Henry's mailbox. Heavy cream cardstock, his name in elegant script. Inside was a gift card to the local hardware store for $200 and a note in the same handwriting, "For your time and expertise. Thank you. O.B." Henry stared at it for a long moment, then walked next door and knocked. Olivia answered in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, less armored. "Henry, hi. Got your envelope." "Oh, good. I wasn't sure what you'd—" "Can't accept it." He held it out. Her expression cooled. "It's not charity. You did work that would have cost me $300 from a professional service. And I told you I wasn't doing it for money. Everyone needs money." "Sure, but that's not why I helped." Henry kept his voice gentle. "I did it because it needed doing, and I could do it. That's it. No payment required." Olivia stared at him like he was speaking a language she'd never learned. "I don't understand you." "That's okay. You don't have to." He set the envelope on her porch railing. "But if you want to do something for me, maybe just say hi when you see me instead of pretending your phone's real interesting." She flushed slightly. I don't." "You do. It's fine. You're busy, but neighbors can be friendly without it meaning anything complicated." Henry smiled. "That's all I'm suggesting." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Henry?" "Yeah?" "Would you and Lucas want to come over for dinner sometime?" He turned back slowly. She looked as surprised by the invitation as he felt. "You cook?" "Not well, but I can order good takeout." "Lucas is 6. His palate tops out at chicken nuggets and mac and cheese." "I can work with that." She crossed her arms, defensive again. "Unless you don't want to." Henry studied her. This brilliant, beautiful, complicated woman who'd climbed a tree alone and was now offering something that clearly cost her. "Saturday work? Around 6? Saturday's perfect." "Okay then." He stepped off her porch. "Fair warning, though. Lucas asks about 8,000 questions an hour." I'm a lawyer. I'm used to interrogation. Henry laughed. Not like this, you're not, he yanked. Saturday arrived with Lucas vibrating at frequencies usually reserved for hummingbirds. Are we really having dinner at the fancy house? We are. Do I have to wear church clothes? Clean jeans and your blue shirt. That's fancy enough. What if I say something dumb? Henry knelt in front of his son, hands on small shoulders. Buddy, you're 6. Everything you say is a little dumb. That's how being 6 works. Just be yourself, use your manners, and don't ask about her money, okay? Okay. Lucas paused. Can I ask about her car? Sure. Can I ask why she doesn't have a husband? Absolutely not. What about Lucas? Okay. Okay. They walked next door at 6 sharp, Lucas clutching a bouquet of dandelions he'd insisted on picking. Olivia answered the door in dark jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back simply. She looked at the wilting flowers in Lucas's fist, and something in her expression cracked open. Are those for me? Dad said you should always bring something when someone invites you over, Lucas announced. We don't have real flowers, but these are still pretty. They're beautiful. Olivia took them carefully. I'll put them in water right now. Her house was exactly what Henry expected. Modern, minimalist, everything in its place. But there were surprises, too. Books everywhere, spilling off shelves in the study. A vintage record player in the corner, framed photographs of landscapes, not people. The kitchen smelled like Chinese takeout and something baking. I got orange chicken, fried rice, and pot stickers, Olivia said, setting out containers. And I made brownies, though I can't promise they're edible. You made brownies? Lucas's eyes went wide. First time. So we'll find out together. They ate at her dining table, Lucas narrating his entire worldview between bites of rice. Olivia listened with an attention that seemed almost clinical at first, but gradually softened into something genuine. She asked good questions, not the condescending kind adults asked kids, but real ones. What did Lucas want to be when he grew up? What was his favorite subject? If he could have any superpower, what would it be? Flying, Lucas said immediately. So I could go anywhere fast. That's practical. Olivia glanced at Henry. What about you? Time travel, Henry said. Go back and tell myself which baseball cards to keep. She laughed. You'd waste time travel on baseball cards? Man's gotta have priorities. After dinner, Lucas discovered Olivia's record collection and begged to play something. She pulled out a Beatles album, and they listened to Here Comes the Sun while the brownies cooled. Lucas fell asleep on her couch halfway through side 2, sprawled out like he owned the place. Olivia stared at him with an expression Henry couldn't quite read. Does he always pass out like that? When he feels safe. Henry stood carefully. I should get him home. Wait. Olivia disappeared into her study and returned with a small wooden box. I found this in my basement when I moved in. Previous owners left it. I think it's a music box, but it's broken. Henry opened it carefully. The mechanism inside was seized, the cylinder scratched. But the craftsmanship was beautiful. Dovetail joints, inlaid marquetry on the lid. This is old, probably 1920s. Can you fix it? Maybe. Why? Olivia traced the lid pattern with one finger. My grandmother had one like this. She died when I was 12. I always regretted that I didn't get to keep it. She looked up at him. I know you're not a music box repair specialist. I'll take a look at it. Henry closed the lid gently. Can't promise anything, but I'll try. Thank you. She helped him gather Lucas into his arms. At the door, she paused. I don't do this. Do what? Have people over, make friends with neighbors, any of it. Henry shifted Lucas's weight, his son's head heavy on his shoulder. Why not? Because I learned a long time ago that depending on people is how you get hurt. Maybe, Henry said quietly, but being alone all the time is how you stay hurt. He walked home before she could respond, carrying his son through the cooling September night, aware of Olivia watching from her doorway until he disappeared inside. The music box sat on Henry's workbench for 2 days before he had time to really examine it. The mechanism was corroded, but not beyond saving. He ordered a replacement spring and new cylinder pins, then spent 3 evenings carefully cleaning and recalibrating the internal works. It was delicate, exacting labor, the the kind that required patience and precision, the kind he was good at. When he finally got it working, the melody was Clair de Lune, soft and haunting and impossibly sad. Henry wound it carefully, listening to the notes drift through his garage, and thought about the woman next door who didn't let people in, and the grandmother she'd lost at 12. He thought about armor and trust, and the difference between being rescued and being caught. Then he wrapped the box in brown paper and walked it next door. Olivia answered in work clothes, clearly home late. She looked exhausted. "Henry, hi. Got something for you." He handed her the package. She unwrapped it slowly, then opened the lid. The music filled her entryway, delicate and perfect. For a moment, she just stood there, hand over her mouth, eyes bright with something that might have been tears. "You fixed it. Told you I'd try." It sounds exactly like hers. Her voice was barely a whisper. "How did you—" Most music boxes from that era used the same few songs. "Just got lucky." Henry stepped back. "Anyway, it's yours now. Enjoy it." "Henry, wait." But he was already walking away, giving her privacy for whatever she was feeling, because some moments weren't meant to be shared. Behind him, the music played on. October arrived with sharp mornings and earlier sunsets. Henry noticed things about Olivia's patterns now. She left for work at 7, returned around 8, sometimes later. She ran every morning, the same 3-mile loop. On Sundays, she sat on her back patio with coffee and case files, her expression intense and isolated. He also noticed when things broke. Her garage door started sticking in the second week of October. She'd get out of her car and have to manually pull it down, frustration evident in every movement. Henry watched her struggle with it for 3 days before walking over one evening with his toolbox. "Tracks need lubricant and the spring's loose," he said without preamble. "Take me 10 minutes. I was going to call someone. Now you don't have to." He was already inside the garage examining the mechanism. "Just prop the door for me." She did, watching him work in silence. When he finished, the door moved smoothly, quietly. He wiped his hands on a rag and nodded toward her car, a sleek sedan that probably cost more than his entire year's income. "Check your tire pressure, too. Front driver's side is low." "How can you tell?" "It's sitting different, just a little, but enough." He packed his tools. "Gas station 2 blocks down has free air." "Henry, you don't have to—" "I know." He met her eyes. "I want to. There's a difference." He left before she could argue, before she could offer payment, or thanks, or any of the things that would make it transactional instead of what it was. Someone taking care of someone else because they could. The next morning, Henry found a bag of expensive coffee on his doorstep with a note, "For being the kind of neighbor I didn't know existed. Thank you." He smiled and made a pot immediately. 2 weeks later, the HOA struck again, this time with a formal letter citing unapproved modifications to Olivia's property and threatening fines. She showed up at Henry's door after work, still in her suit, anger vibrating off her like heat. "They're claiming the oak tree's root system is damaging the sidewalk, and I'm responsible for repairs." She thrust the letter at him. "This is ridiculous. That tree's been there for 300 years. Henry read the letter carefully. "It's Steve Morrison." "Who?" "HOA president. Lives 4 houses down. He's had a problem with that tree since before you moved in. Wanted it removed for sightline issues." "So this is personal?" "Everything with Steve is personal." Henry handed the letter back. "But he's also wrong. Tree that old, roots are deep and stable. They're not damaging anything." "How do you know?" "Because I checked the sidewalk when I was researching property lines. No cracks, no heaving, nothing." He leaned against his doorframe. "You want me to handle this. Handle it how?" "Let me talk to him, neighbor to neighbor." Olivia's jaw tightened. "I can fight my own battles." "I know you can. But sometimes it helps to have someone who speaks his language." Henry's voice was gentle. "You're a lawyer from California in an expensive house. Steve sees you as everything wrong with the neighborhood. But me? I'm just a local guy who knows trees. He'll listen. And if he doesn't, then you unleash your legal skills. But let me try first." She studied him for a long moment. "Why do you keep doing this?" Doing what? Helping me. Protecting me. You barely know me. Henry considered his answer carefully. Because you climbed that tree alone when you shouldn't have had to, and because I can help. That's enough. Olivia's expression did something complicated, softened and sharpened at the same time. Okay, but if Steve Morrison doesn't listen, I'm filing a formal response that'll make him regret ever learning to read. Deal. Henry showed up at Steve Morrison's house the next evening with a folder of documents and the calm demeanor of someone who'd dealt with difficult people before. Steve was exactly what Henry expected. Late 50s, retired middle management, the kind of guy who'd found a small kingdom in an HOA board and ruled it like a tyrant. Henry, what can I do for you? Wanted to talk about that oak tree, the one on the property line between my place and Olivia Bennett's. Steve's expression soured immediately. That monstrosity needs to come down. It's a hazard. Actually, it's not. Henry opened his folder. I've got the property survey here. Trees on the boundary line, which makes it shared property. You need both owners' consent for removal. I don't consent. The roots are destroying the sidewalk. No, they're not. Henry pulled out photographs he'd taken. Sidewalks in perfect condition. I checked with a level. No cracks, no displacement, nothing. He set them on Steve's porch railing. And even if there were damage, the city's responsible for sidewalk maintenance, not individual homeowners. Says so in the municipal code. He produced another document. Section 12.4.7. Steve's face was reddening. She put you up to this? Nobody put me up to anything. I'm protecting my property. That tree's been there since before this neighborhood existed. It's got historical significance and ecological value. You try to force removal, I'll fight it. And I've got the documentation to win. This is about that woman. This is about a 300-year-old white oak that deserves respect. Henry's voice stayed level, but something in it hardened. You got a problem with Ms. Bennett because she's successful and didn't ask your permission to move here. That's your issue, not hers. But you're not using that tree as an excuse to harass her. We clear? Steve opened his mouth, then closed it. Henry had done his homework, had the facts, and had the quiet confidence of someone who didn't bluff. Fine, Steve muttered. But if I see any actual damage, you'll follow proper channels and document it correctly, just like everyone else. Henry collected his papers. Have a good evening, Steve. He walked away feeling the satisfaction of a problem solved quietly and completely. When he told Olivia later that night, standing in his driveway while Lucas played in the yard, she stared at him like he'd performed magic. You just handled it? Told you I would. But you researched municipal code and property law and took photographs. Took maybe 2 hours. Not a big deal. Henry, that's literally what I do for a living, and it would have taken me longer. He shrugged. You fight battles in courtrooms. I fight them in basements and city records. Different skills, same result. Olivia was quiet for a moment, watching Lucas chase fireflies in the dimming light. Nobody's ever just taken care of something for me like that. Maybe you never let them. Maybe nobody ever offered without wanting something in return. Henry met her eyes. I don't want anything, Olivia, except maybe for you to stop looking so surprised when someone's decent to you. She laughed, but it sounded shaky. That might take a while. I've got time. Lucas ran over, out of breath and grinning. Dad, Ms. Bennett, I caught 3 fireflies. Did you let them go? Henry asked. Yeah, they're too pretty to keep in a jar. Olivia smiled at his son with something that looked almost like longing. That's very wise, Lucas. Dad says you should only keep things that want to be kept. Lucas looked up at his father with absolute trust. Right, Dad? Right, buddy. Henry ruffled his hair, aware of Olivia watching them both with an expression he couldn't quite read. When they went inside later, Henry looked back to see her still standing in her driveway, lit by the glow of her porch light, looking less like armor and more like a person. The music box sat on Olivia's desk at work, a small rebellion against the sterile corporate environment. She'd wind it sometimes between conference calls, let Claire de Lune play, while she reviewed contracts and negotiated terms that could make or break companies. Her colleagues noticed but didn't comment. Olivia Bennett wasn't someone you questioned. but she questioned herself. Late one Thursday night, buried under a merger that was collapsing in real time, she stared at her computer screen and thought about Henry Carter fixing her garage door, about him researching property law to protect a tree, about the way he'd caught her without hesitation when she fell. She thought about how he never asked for anything in return. It was so foreign to her experience that she almost didn't trust it. In Olivia's world, everything was transactional. You traded expertise for money, access for loyalty, vulnerability for leverage. Nobody just helped. Nobody just showed up. But Henry did. She wound the music box again, listening to the delicate melody, and remembered her grandmother telling her once that the strongest people weren't the ones who never fell. They were the ones who knew how to land. Olivia had been falling alone her entire life. Maybe it was time to trust someone to catch her. The night everything changed started ordinarily enough. Henry was in his garage refinishing a dining table when he heard the crash. He dropped his sanding block and ran outside to find Olivia standing in her driveway, staring at her car. The driver's side mirror was shattered, glass scattered across the concrete. What happened? Some asshole in a truck sideswiped me 2 blocks from here and kept going. Her voice was shaking, with anger or adrenaline, Henry couldn't tell. Didn't even stop. You okay? I'm fine. The car's not. Henry examined the damage. The mirror was destroyed, but there was also a deep scrape along the door panel. You get a plate number? No, it happened too fast. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'll call my insurance tomorrow. Come inside, you're shaking. I'm fine. Olivia. His voice was gentle but firm. Come inside. She followed him into his house where Lucas was already asleep. Henry guided her to the couch, then disappeared into the kitchen and returned with tea. Chamomile. It helps. She took the mug with trembling hands. This is stupid. It's just a car. It's not stupid. You got hit. That's scary. He sat across from her, giving her space. Adrenaline's got to go somewhere. They sat in silence while she drank the tea. Gradually, her breathing evened out. The shaking stopped. She looked around his living room, comfortable furniture showing wear, Lucas's drawings covering the fridge, a life built on love rather than aesthetics. Your house feels safe, she said quietly. That's the goal. Mine doesn't. It's beautiful, but it doesn't feel like home. She set the mug down. Sometimes I wonder what I'm building all this for. What do you mean? The career, the house, the perfect life on paper. I've been chasing success for so long, I forgot to build anything real. She looked at him. You have Lucas? You have purpose? What do I have? You have whatever you decide to build, Olivia. It's not too late. Isn't it? I'm 34. Most people my age have families, partnerships, connections. I have a career and an empty house. Henry leaned forward. You also have intelligence, strength, and more courage than you give yourself credit for. You climbed a tree to solve a problem. You stood up to an HOA. You invited a neighbor and his kid to dinner, even though it terrified you. That's not nothing. It feels like nothing. Then you're not looking at it right. His voice was quiet but certain. You're building, Olivia. It just looks different than you expected. She met his eyes, and something passed between them, recognition maybe, or understanding, or the beginning of something neither of them had names for yet. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For catching me. Again. Henry smiled. Anytime you need to jump, I'll be there. She left shortly after, but the air between them had shifted. As Henry watched her walk back to her house, he realized he wasn't just helping a neighbor anymore. He was falling for her, and he had no idea if she'd catch him back. The morning after the accident, Henry woke to find Olivia's car already gone from her driveway. She'd left before dawn, probably headed to the body shop before work. He stood at his kitchen window with coffee cooling in his hands, staring at the empty space where her sedan usually sat, and felt the absence like a physical thing. Lucas stumbled into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, hair sticking up in 17 directions. Is Miss Bennett okay? She's fine, buddy. Just got her car fixed. But she was sad last night. I heard her voice through the window. Henry crouched down to his son's level. She was shaken up. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too. Did you make it better? I tried. Lucas wrapped his arms around Henry's neck in a fierce hug. "You're good at making things better, Dad." Henry held his son close, breathing in the smell of kid shampoo and morning warmth, and wondered when exactly he'd started wanting to make things better for Olivia Bennet specifically. When had neighborly concern shifted into something more complicated? When had catching her stopped being an accident and started being a choice he'd make over and over again? He didn't have answers. He just had the growing certainty that he was in trouble. The kind of trouble that started with kitchen tea and ended with a heart that couldn't protect itself anymore. 3 days passed before he saw her again. She pulled into her driveway just after 8 on a Wednesday evening, driving a rental car while hers was being repaired. Henry was helping Lucas with homework at the kitchen table when he heard the engine, and he hated how much his chest loosened at the sound. "Can I go say hi?" Lucas asked, already halfway out of his chair. "Finish your math problems first." "But Dad—" "Finish them. Then you can go over." Lucas attacked the worksheet with renewed focus, tongue poking out in concentration. Henry watched him work and thought about his wife, Sarah, who'd had the same expression when she was focused on something. Lucas had her eyes, her smile, her relentless optimism. Sometimes it hurt to look at him. Sometimes it was the only thing that kept Henry breathing. 20 minutes later, Lucas burst out the back door and ran across the lawn calling Olivia's name. Henry followed more slowly, giving his son space to be the bridge he himself wasn't sure how to build. Olivia was standing on her patio with her blazer draped over one arm, looking exhausted. When she saw Lucas barreling toward her, though, something in her expression softened. "Hey, Lucas." "Dad said you were in an accident. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? Is your car dead?" "Whoa, slow down." She smiled tiredly. "I'm fine. Car's getting fixed. Should be back in a few days." "Dad made you tea when you were sad." Olivia's eyes found Henry's over Lucas's head. "He did. Your dad's good at taking care of people." "That's because he's the best dad ever." Lucas grabbed her hand without self-consciousness. "Want to see the spaceship I built with Legos?" "Lucas," Henry interrupted gently, "Ms. Bennet just got home from work. She's probably tired." "It's okay," Olivia said quickly. "I'd love to see it." So they ended up in Henry's living room, Olivia perched on the edge of his couch while Lucas narrated the entire construction process of a Lego structure that looked more like an abstract sculpture than any spacecraft Henry had ever seen. She listened with the same focused attention she'd bring to a corporate merger, asking questions about propulsion systems and crew capacity like she was genuinely interested. Henry leaned against the doorframe watching them, his heart doing something complicated and painful in his chest. When Lucas finally ran out of steam and went to brush his teeth for bed, Olivia stood to leave. "Thank you for letting me crash your evening." "You didn't crash anything." Henry walked her to the door. "You doing okay? Really?" She hesitated, and he saw the moment she decided to tell him the truth. "I got into it with my boss today. Big case falling apart because the other side found irregularities in the preliminary filings. He blamed my team. It wasn't our fault, but he needed someone to yell at." She rubbed her eyes. "So I've had better days. Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly. Want to pretend it didn't happen." "That's fair." Henry opened the door for her. "But if you change your mind, I'm right next door." "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make space for me. Without pushing, without expecting anything." She looked at him with genuine confusion. "Most people want something." "I want you to be okay," Henry said simply. "That's it." Olivia studied his face like she was searching for the catch, the hidden angle, the manipulation. When she didn't find it, something in her crumpled just slightly. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it. Just know it's true." She left without saying anything else, but Henry saw her pause on his porch steps, saw her hand touch her chest like something there hurt, before she walked home alone. The next afternoon, Henry found a package on his doorstep. Inside was a first edition copy of a carpentry techniques book he'd mentioned wanting months ago during their dinner. The note said, "Because you make space, thank you for that." Henry sat on his porch steps holding the book, staring at her house, and knew he was past the point of protecting himself. Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Olivia would come home late, exhausted and armored, and somehow end up at Henry's house. Sometimes it was Lucas who pulled her over with an invitation to see a new drawing or help with a science project. Sometimes it was Henry mentioning he'd made too much dinner. Sometimes she just appeared like she'd forgotten how to stay away. They didn't talk about what was happening between them. They just existed in the same space, and slowly, Olivia's armor started coming off in pieces. One Thursday evening, she showed up with her laptop and a stack of case files. "Can I work at your kitchen table? My house feels too quiet tonight." "Sure." Henry was building a bookshelf in the garage but came inside to make coffee. "Lucas is at a friend's house for a play date. Pick him up in an hour." "So you'll be here?" "Yeah, why?" "Just, I like knowing someone else is in the house." She opened her laptop quickly, like the admission embarrassed her. "It's easier to focus." Henry made 2 cups of coffee and set one beside her without comment. Then he went back to his garage, leaving the door open so she could hear the sounds of him working. The saw, the sander, the quiet movements of someone making something whole. When he came back an hour later to get Lucas, she was still there, files spread across his table like she belonged. "You're welcome to stay," he said. "I'll make dinner when we get back." "I should go. Or you could stay. Either way is fine." She stayed. And when Lucas came home full of stories about the playdate, he climbed right into her lap on the couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Olivia went rigid for just a moment, then slowly relaxed, her hand coming up to rest on Lucas's back while he chattered about Pokemon cards and playground politics. Henry made spaghetti and watched them from the kitchen, his heart doing that painful, complicated thing again. This was dangerous. This was falling without a net. This was catching feelings for a woman who'd built her entire life around not needing anyone. But he couldn't seem to stop. After dinner, after Lucas was asleep, Olivia helped Henry clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, her washing while he dried until she spoke quietly. "I got offered a promotion today." "That's great. Congratulations." "It would mean more travel, longer hours, a partnership track." "That what you want?" She handed him a plate, not meeting his eyes. "A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. It's everything I've been working toward." "And now?" "Now I don't know." She drained the sink, watching the water spiral away. "I look at what you have with Lucas, this life you built, this home, and I wonder if I'm chasing the wrong things." Henry set the dish towel aside and leaned against the counter. "What do you want, Olivia?" "I want to stop being alone." The words came out raw and unguarded. "I want to come home to more than an empty house. I want someone to know if I had a bad day. I want—" She stopped, shaking her head. "This is stupid." "It's not stupid. I'm 34 years old and successful by every measurable standard, but I'm standing in my neighbor's kitchen having an existential crisis about whether my life means anything." She laughed bitterly. "That's not stupid. That's human." Henry moved closer but didn't touch her. "You're allowed to want more than career success. You're allowed to want connection." "I don't know how to have that. I never learned." "So learn now." "What if I'm too broken? What if I've been alone so long I don't know how to be anything else?" Henry thought about the year after Sarah died, when he'd been so deep in grief he couldn't see daylight, when he'd barely functioned beyond keeping Lucas alive, when he'd been certain he'd never feel whole again. "You're not broken. You're just scared. There's a difference." Olivia finally looked at him, really looked at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What if I mess this up?" "Mess what up?" "This, us, whatever this is becoming." Henry's heart kicked against his ribs. "Is it becoming something?" "I don't know. Is it?" They stood there in his kitchen with 2 feet of space between them, and the air felt electric. Henry could close that distance in one step, could pull her close, could kiss her, could take what he'd been wanting for weeks now. But Olivia was looking at him like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, and he remembered what it felt like to jump without being sure someone would catch you. So he stayed still and kept his voice gentle. "I think it could be something, if you wanted it to be." "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too." "You don't look terrified." "I'm good at hiding it." He smiled slightly. "But I am, because I've got Lucas to think about, and if this goes wrong, it doesn't just hurt me, it hurts him too." Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. Maybe we should just stay neighbors. Keep it simple. We could do that. But you don't want to. No, Henry said honestly. I don't. But I also won't push you into something you're not ready for. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. Then she grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. I need to think. Okay. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. Henry? Yeah? Thank you for not making this easy. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. She left, and Henry stood alone in his kitchen, wondering if he'd just lost something before it even started. The weekend arrived cold and gray, October sliding into the kind of weather that made you want to stay inside with blankets and hot chocolate. Henry kept busy, took Lucas to soccer practice, finished a commission, cleaned out the garage. He didn't see Olivia. Her car stayed in her driveway, her curtains stayed closed, and he forced himself not to go over there. She needed space. He could give her that. Sunday afternoon, Lucas was building a fort out of couch cushions when someone knocked on the door. Henry opened it to find Olivia standing there in jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair down, no makeup. She looked younger this way. Vulnerable. Hi, she said. Hi. Can we talk? Yeah, come in. She stepped inside but stayed near the door. Lucas popped his head out of the fort. Miss Bennett, want to see my castle? Maybe later, buddy, Henry said gently. Can you play in your room for a bit? Lucas looked between them with 6-year-old perceptiveness, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. When his door clicked shut, Olivia spoke quickly, like she'd rehearsed this. I've been thinking about what you said, about this becoming something, and I want it to. I do. But I need you to understand what you'd be getting into. Okay? I'm not easy. I work too much. I don't know how to turn off my brain. I've never lived with anyone. I've never had a relationship last longer than 8 months because I always find a reason to leave before it gets real. I don't know how to be soft or vulnerable or any of the things relationships require. She was talking faster now, words tumbling out. I will probably mess this up. I will pull away when I get scared. I will prioritize work when I should prioritize you. I will... Olivia. Henry stepped closer. Breathe. She sucked in air like she'd forgotten how. I'm trying to warn you. I hear you. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back, and took her hand. Now hear me. I'm not easy either. I've got a kid who's my whole world, and that's not going to change. I've got grief that still shows up sometimes. I've got a dead wife whose memory I won't erase or minimize. I work with my hands for a living, and I'll never make the kind of money you do. I can't take you to fancy restaurants or buy you expensive things. My life is simple and small, and if you need big and complicated, I can't give you that. I don't want big and complicated, she said quietly. I want this. I want you fixing things without being asked. I want Lucas falling asleep on my couch. I want to feel less alone. Then we'll figure it out together. Henry squeezed her hand gently. We'll mess up. We'll have hard conversations. We'll probably hurt each other sometimes. But we'll do it honestly, and we'll do it together. Deal? Olivia looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, searching for something. Whatever she found there must have been enough, because she nodded. Deal. Good. Henry pulled her closer, slowly, giving her every chance to retreat. When she didn't, when she came willingly into his arms, he wrapped her up and held on tight. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, her hands fisted in his shirt. They stood there in his living room, holding each other like they were both trying to remember how this worked. I'm still terrified, she whispered against his chest. Me too. But we'll be terrified together. She laughed shakily. Is that supposed to be romantic? Little bit. They stayed like that until Lucas's door opened and small feet padded down the hall. Are you guys hugging? Olivia pulled back slightly, but didn't let go of Henry completely. Yeah, we are. Does that mean Ms. Bennett is your girlfriend now, Dad? Henry looked at Olivia, raising an eyebrow in question. She bit her lip, then nodded. Yeah, buddy, I guess it does. Lucas let out a whoop and launched himself at them both, wrapping his arms around their legs. This is the best day ever. Can she come to my soccer game next week? Can she help with my Halloween costume? Can she... One thing at a time, Henry laughed, ruffling his son's hair. Let's start with dinner and see how it goes. They ordered pizza and watched a movie, Lucas wedged between them on the couch. It was ordinary and domestic and absolutely nothing like Olivia's usual life. But when Henry looked over and saw her smiling at something Lucas said, he thought maybe ordinary was exactly what she'd been missing. Later, after Lucas was in bed, they sat on Henry's back porch with blankets and beer, watching the stars come out. Olivia's head rested on his shoulder, her hand in his, and the silence felt comfortable instead of loaded. I took the promotion, she said eventually. Henry's chest tightened. Yeah? But I negotiated the terms. Less travel, set hours. I told them I had personal commitments I wasn't willing to sacrifice. She turned to look at him. My boss thought I was insane. Partnership track lawyers don't have personal commitments. What'd you tell him? That maybe I didn't want to be that kind of lawyer anymore. She smiled slightly. He'll either respect it or he won't. But I meant what I said about not wanting to be alone. And that means making space for this. For you, for Lucas. For something more than just work. Henry kissed her forehead gently. I'm proud of you. For what? For choosing what you want instead of what you think you should want. Olivia was quiet for a moment. I've never had someone be proud of me for anything other than winning. Get used to it. I'm proud of you for a lot of things. Like what? Like showing up here even though it scared you. Like letting Lucas into your space. Like fixing that music box even though it hurt to remember your grandmother. Like being honest about being terrified. He tipped her chin up to meet her eyes. You're brave, Olivia. Braver than you know. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, like she was still learning the shape of this thing between them. Henry kissed her back carefully, keeping it gentle, keeping it safe. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. This is going to be weird, isn't it? Dating my neighbor? Probably, but convenient. Can't really ghost someone who lives 30 feet away. She laughed. Fair point. They sat together under the stars until the cold drove them inside. And when Olivia finally went home, Henry stood at his window and watched her lights come on one by one. She waved from her kitchen window, and he waved back, and it felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. The following week settled into a new rhythm. Olivia came over for dinner 3 nights. Henry fixed her porch light and the leaking faucet in her guest bathroom. Lucas recruited her help with a school project about community helpers and insisted she count as one. They moved carefully around each other, learning the boundaries and the soft spots, figuring out how to build something together. It wasn't perfect. Olivia still worked too late sometimes. Henry still had moments where grief ambushed him, and he had to step away. They had their first fight about her canceling dinner because of a work emergency. Henry frustrated and Olivia defensive, both of them realizing they had no idea how to do conflict without walking away. But they stayed. They talked it through. They learned. One evening, Henry was teaching Olivia how to use his miter saw. She'd expressed interest in building her own bookshelf. When his phone rang, he glanced at the screen and his expression changed. I need to take this. Of course. He stepped into the yard and Olivia tried not to listen, but his voice carried through the open garage door. Yeah, I understand. No, that's fine. Just let me know what you need. A long pause. I know. It's okay. We'll figure it out. When he came back inside, he looked tired. Everything okay? Olivia asked. That was Sarah's mom. She wants to come visit Lucas next month. He ran a hand through his hair. She does this sometimes. Gets worried she's missing too much of his life. Shows up for a few days, then disappears for another 6 months. That must be hard. It's harder on Lucas. He gets attached, then she's gone again. Henry sat on his workbench, shoulders slumped. But she's his grandmother. I can't say no. Olivia moved between his knees, hands on his shoulders. You're doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Doesn't feel like it. That's how you know it is. She kissed him softly. And you're not alone anymore. If you need help when she visits, I'm here. Henry pulled her close, burying his face in her neck. Thank you. They stood like that in the sawdust-scented garage, holding each other while the world spun on, and Olivia realized this was what partnership felt like. Not grand gestures or romantic drama, but showing up in the small moments when someone needed you to be steady. She could do this. She wanted to do this. The realization settled into her bones like certainty. 2 weeks later, Olivia had to fly to Seattle for a deposition. She'd be gone 3 days. The morning she left, she stopped by Henry's house to say goodbye. "I'll be back Friday evening," she said, adjusting her carry-on. "Call me if you need anything." Lucas hugged her legs. "Bring me a present." "Lucas," Henry chided gently. "What?" "Miss Bennett likes bringing presents." Olivia laughed. "I'll see what I can find." She kissed Henry quickly, aware of Lucas watching with interest. "Miss you already?" "We'll be here when you get back." She left, and the house felt emptier for it. Henry realized he'd gotten used to her presence, the way she'd become woven into their daily life. Lucas noticed too, asking 3 times that first day when she was coming home. Olivia called every night from her hotel room, talking to Lucas about his day and then to Henry about hers. The case was brutal, opposing counsel playing dirty, but she sounded energized rather than drained. "I forgot how much I like winning," she admitted on the second night. "You're allowed to love your job and love other things too," Henry said. "They're not mutually exclusive." "Feels like they are sometimes. Only if you make them that way." She was quiet for a moment. "I miss you. Is that weird? We've only been together a few weeks." "Not weird. I miss you too." "What are you wearing?" Henry laughed. "Are we doing that?" "No, I want to picture you. Where are you?" "Sitting on my bed in sweatpants and an old t-shirt. Very sexy." "Sounds perfect." Her voice went soft. "I'll be home soon. I'll be waiting." Friday evening, Henry and Lucas drove to the airport to pick her up. Lucas bounced in his car seat the entire way, chattering about the present she'd promised. When Olivia came through arrivals with her roller bag and tired eyes, Lucas ran straight to her. She dropped everything to catch him, holding him tight while he told her about every single thing that had happened in 3 days. Henry hung back, just watching. When her eyes found his over Lucas's head, the smile she gave him was pure and unguarded and absolutely devastating. This woman, this brilliant, complicated, terrified woman who'd climbed a tree alone and then decided to trust him to catch her. He was so far gone, it wasn't even funny. They drove home through Friday evening traffic, Lucas monopolizing the conversation, Olivia reaching across the console to hold Henry's hand. When they pulled into their street, their houses sitting side by side in the fading light, it struck Henry how much had changed in 2 months. He'd caught a woman falling from a tree, and somehow she'd caught him right back. That night, after Lucas fell asleep clutching the Space Needle snow globe Olivia had brought him from Seattle, she and Henry sat in his backyard with wine and the comfortable silence that comes from people who'd stopped trying to fill every gap with words. The October air had turned sharp, carrying the promise of winter, and Olivia had stolen one of Henry's flannels to wear over her sweater. It swallowed her frame, sleeves hanging past her hands, and something about seeing her wrapped in his clothes made Henry's chest feel too small for his heart. "I need to tell you something," Olivia said, staring into her wine glass like it held answers. "Something happened in Seattle." Henry's stomach dropped, but he kept his voice steady. "Okay. One of the partners at the firm I was deposing against offered me a job. Big firm, huge salary, partnership guaranteed within 2 years. She finally looked at him. "It's everything I've worked toward my entire career." "What'd you say?" "I said I'd think about it." She set her glass down. "A year ago, I would have accepted on the spot. 6 months ago, I would have at least been tempted. But sitting in that conference room, listening to him talk about billable hours and corner offices, all I could think about was Lucas asking when I'd be home, and you telling me I could love my job and love other things too." "What do you want to do?" "I want to say no." She laughed shakily. "Which is insane. This is literally the opportunity of a lifetime. But it would mean moving to Seattle, working 80-hour weeks, building a life that doesn't have room for anything except work." She turned to face him fully. "And I don't want that life anymore. I want this. I want Friday night airport pickups and Lucas's snow globes and wearing your flannel in your backyard. I want ordinary and small and real." Henry reached for her hand. "Then say no." "It's not that simple, Sung." "Yes, it is. You already know what you want. You're just scared to choose it." Of course I'm scared, she said, voice rising. What if I'm wrong? What if I turn this down and we don't work out and I've sacrificed my career for nothing? What if you take it and spend the rest of your life wondering what you gave up? Henry kept his tone gentle. Olivia, I can't tell you what to choose. This has to be your decision. But I can tell you that whatever you choose, I'll respect it, even if it means you leave. You just let me go? If that's what you needed? He squeezed her hand. But I'd really prefer you stayed. She kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to prove something to both of them. When they broke apart, she was crying. I don't want to leave. I don't want to be that person anymore, chasing the next promotion like it'll finally make me feel like I'm enough. You are enough, right now, exactly as you are. How do you know that? Because I see you. I see. Not the lawyer or the career or the impressive resume. Just you. And you're more than enough. Olivia buried her face in his shoulder, and Henry held her while she cried out years of pressure and expectations and the exhausting weight of proving herself to people who'd never really see her anyway. When she finally quieted, he kissed her forehead and said, Whatever you decide, we'll figure it out, okay? Okay. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry for falling apart on you. Don't apologize. That's what I'm here for. To watch me cry? To catch you when you fall. Same thing, different context. She laughed wetly. You're ridiculous. You like it. I really do. She stood, pulling him up with her. Walk me home? They crossed the 30 feet between their houses, hand in hand, and at her door Olivia kissed him goodnight with a tenderness that felt like a promise. Thank you for not making this easy. Nothing worth having ever is. She went inside, and Henry walked back to his house feeling the weight of what she was carrying. He wanted to tell her the choice was obvious, that love and connection mattered more than career prestige, but he knew it wasn't that simple. Olivia had built her entire identity around professional success. Asking her to choose something different wasn't asking her to turn down a job. It was asking her to reimagine who she was. All he could do was make sure she knew she had a place to land, whatever she decided. The next week, Olivia was quieter than usual. She still came over for dinner, still helped Lucas with homework, still fell asleep on Henry's couch while they watched movies. But there was a tension in her shoulders, a distance in her eyes that told Henry she was working through something she couldn't share yet. He gave her space, waited, trusted. On Wednesday evening, she showed up at his door with takeout and a determined expression. I need to talk to you, both of you. Lucas looked up from his Lego project. Am I in trouble? Nobody, Olivia smiled at him. I just want to tell you both something important. They sat at the kitchen table, Lucas swinging his legs and stealing spring rolls while Olivia gathered her thoughts. Henry watched her, this woman he'd fallen for without meaning to, and prepared himself for whatever she was about to say. I turned down the job in Seattle, Olivia said finally. Called the partner this morning and said no. Lucas cheered. Henry felt relief flood through him, but he kept his voice neutral. You sure that's what you want? I'm sure. I also talked to my current firm about restructuring my position, set boundaries around hours and travel. They weren't thrilled, but they agreed. She looked between them. I'm not giving up my career. I'm just making room for other things too, for you guys, for a life outside work. That's awesome. Lucas jumped off his chair and hugged her. Does this mean you'll be around more? Yeah, it does. Can you come to my school fall festival next Friday? We're doing a costume parade and everything. Olivia looked at Henry, who nodded encouragement. I'd love to, Lucas. After dinner, after Lucas retreated to his room to pick out his festival costume, Henry pulled Olivia into his arms. I'm proud of you. I'm terrified I made the wrong choice. You made the brave choice. That's all that matters. What if it doesn't work out? What if I resent you for it later? Henry tilted her chin up. Then we'll deal with it later. But right now you made a choice that honored what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. That's huge. I've never done that before. Chosen something for myself instead of for my career. How's it feel? She considered this. Scary, but also kind of free. Good. He kissed her softly. That's exactly how it should feel. They stood in his kitchen holding each other, and Henry thought about all the ways she'd changed since that afternoon in the oak tree. She was softer now, more open. She laughed easier. She let Lucas climb all over her without flinching. She wore Henry's clothes and fell asleep on his couch and showed up for dinner without needing an invitation. She was learning to trust, learning to stay. And Henry was learning that catching someone didn't mean holding them down. It meant giving them a safe place to land so they could choose to jump again. The school fall festival arrived with perfect October weather, crisp air, blue skies, leaves brilliant with color. Lucas had chosen to dress as an astronaut, complete with a cardboard helmet Henry had helped him construct. Olivia showed up wearing jeans and boots, her hair in a ponytail, looking more relaxed than Henry had ever seen her. "You ready for this?" he asked as they walked toward the school. "How chaotic are we talking?" "Think controlled chaos with juice boxes and face painting." "I survived corporate litigation. I can handle elementary school festivals." Lucas ran ahead to meet his friends, leaving Henry and Olivia to navigate the crowds of parents and teachers setting up booths. Henry introduced her to people he knew, other parents, Lucas's teacher, the principal. Each time he said, "This is Olivia, my girlfriend," with quiet pride. And each time Olivia smiled like the title still surprised her. They were halfway through the costume parade when Henry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. "It's Sarah's mom. She's here." Olivia followed his gaze to see a woman in her early 60s standing near the entrance, scanning the crowd. She was elegant in that understated way that spoke of old money, her posture perfect, her expression carefully controlled. "You want me to make myself scarce?" Olivia asked quietly. "No, stay." Henry took her hand. "Lucas should see that we're together, that it's normal." They walked over, Lucas between them, and the woman's eyes landed on their joined hands with visible surprise. "Henry! Karen! Didn't know you were coming today." "I wanted to surprise Lucas." Karen crouched down to her grandson's level. "Hi, sweetheart. Look at you. An astronaut. Grandma!" Lucas hugged her, then immediately started talking about his costume and the festival and everything he'd done in the past hour. Karen listened with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, her attention flickering between Lucas and Olivia. "Karen, this is Olivia Bennett, my girlfriend." Henry's voice was steady. "Olivia, this is Karen Walsh, Sarah's mother." The two women shook hands with the careful politeness of people sizing each other up. "It's nice to meet you," Olivia said. "Henry's mentioned you." "Has he?" Karen's tone was pleasant but cool. "He didn't mention you." "It's fairly recent," Henry said evenly. "We've been together about 6 weeks." Karen's smile tightened just slightly. "Well, that's wonderful. I'm sure Sarah would want you to be happy." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Olivia felt Henry's hand tense in hers, but his voice stayed calm. "I think she would." Lucas, oblivious to the tension, grabbed his grandmother's hand. "Come see the cakewalk. They have chocolate cake." Karen let herself be pulled away, but not before giving Olivia one more assessing look. When they were alone, Olivia turned to Henry. "That was fun. Sorry, she's protective of Sarah's memory, probably sees you as a replacement." "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just wasn't expecting her today." He squeezed her hand. "Thanks for staying." "Where else would I go?" They found Karen and Lucas at the cakewalk, watching him jump between numbered squares with pure joy. Karen stood apart from the other parents, maintaining that careful distance that spoke of someone who didn't quite know how to be casual. Olivia recognized it because she'd perfected the same stance herself. "He looks happy," Olivia said, moving to stand beside her. Karen glanced over. "He does. Henry's done well with him. He's an amazing father." "Sarah would be pleased." Karen's voice softened. She worried before she died about whether Henry could handle it alone. He wasn't alone. He had Lucas. That made all the difference. Karen studied her more carefully now. "You care about my grandson." "I do. He's a remarkable kid." "And Henry?" Olivia met her gaze directly. "I care about him too, very much. It's only been 6 weeks. Sometimes that's all it takes to know." Karen was quiet for a moment, watching Lucas win the cakewalk and celebrate like he'd won the lottery. I don't want him hurt. Either of them. Neither do I. Good. Karen's expression softened just slightly. Then maybe we can figure out how to make this work. It wasn't exactly a blessing, but it was a start. Olivia nodded, and they stood together watching Lucas devour chocolate cake with his friends, two women from completely different worlds finding common ground in their love for the same little boy. Later, after Karen left with promises to visit again soon, Henry and Olivia walked Lucas home through the twilight. Their son, and Olivia realized she'd started thinking of Lucas as partly hers, chattered endlessly about the festival, still wearing his astronaut helmet. "Grandma was nice," Lucas said, "but she seemed sad." "She misses your mom," Henry explained gently. "Grandmas never stop missing their daughters." "Is it okay that Miss Olivia is your girlfriend?" "Of course it is. Why?" "Because Mom isn't here anymore, and I don't want her to be sad in heaven." Henry stopped walking and knelt in front of his son. "Buddy, your mom loved us both so much, and one thing she always said was that love doesn't run out. There's always room for more. So her loving us doesn't mean we can't love other people too, and I think she'd be really happy that Olivia is in our lives." "You think so?" "I know so." Lucas considered this with the seriousness only 6-year-olds could manage. Then he looked at Olivia. "Do you love us?" Olivia's breath caught. She looked at Henry, who gave her the smallest nod of encouragement, then crouched down beside him. "Yeah, Lucas, I do." "Good." He hugged her suddenly, fierce and trusting. "I love you too." Over his head, Olivia met Henry's eyes, and what she saw there made her chest ache with something too big for words. This was real. This family they were building, this life they were creating. It was messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying, and she'd never wanted anything more. They got Lucas home and into bed, where he fell asleep still wearing his helmet. Henry tried to remove it twice before giving up. "We'll deal with it in the morning." Downstairs, Olivia collapsed onto the couch. That was intense. "Which part? Meeting Sarah's mom or Lucas telling you he loves you?" "Both, all of it." She pulled him down beside her. "I've never had a kid tell me they loved me before." "How'd it feel?" "Terrifying, amazing. Like I just made a promise I'm not sure I know how to keep." "You don't have to know how, you just have to show up. That's all love is, really. Showing up, over and over, even when it's hard." Olivia rested her head on his shoulder. "Your wife was lucky to have you." "I was lucky to have her. She taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present." He kissed Olivia's hair. "And I'm lucky to have you now." "Even though I'm a disaster at this whole relationship thing?" "You're not a disaster. You're learning. There's a difference." She tilted her face up to kiss him, and what started gentle turned deeper, more urgent. Henry pulled back slightly. "Lucas is asleep upstairs." "I know. And we've been taking things slow." "I know that too." She kissed him again. "But I'm tired of being scared. I want this. I want you." Henry searched her face, making sure this was really what she wanted, then stood and pulled her up with him. "Come on." He led her to his bedroom, closing the door quietly behind them. The room was simple. A bed, a dresser, photos of Lucas on the nightstand. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just real life in all its ordinary detail. Olivia had spent years in expensive hotels and pristine apartments, but this felt more like home than any of them. They undressed each other slowly, learning the landscape of each other's bodies with hands and mouths and whispered words. Henry was gentle and thorough, paying attention to what made her gasp, what made her arch into him. Olivia had been with men before, but this felt different. This felt like being seen completely and chosen anyway. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Olivia's head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this again," Henry said quietly. "Have what?" "Someone to come home to. Someone to build a life with." He kissed her forehead. "After Sarah died, I convinced myself that was it. I had my one great love, and I should be grateful for that." "What changed?" "You climbed a tree." He smiled in the darkness. "And I realized that sometimes love shows up when you're not looking for it. Sometimes it just appears in your backyard and asks you to catch it." I didn't ask you to catch me. No, but you trusted me to anyway. That's even better. Olivia propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I'm falling in love with you, just so you know. Just so I know, huh? Yeah. Thought you should have the information. Henry cupped her face in his hands. I'm already there. Have been for weeks. Really? Really? He pulled her down for a kiss. You scared the hell out of me falling out of that tree, and then you scared me more by staying. Good scared or bad scared? The best kind of scared. The kind that means something matters. They made love again, slower this time, and when Olivia finally fell asleep in his arms, Henry lay awake thinking about second chances and the courage it took to reach for them. He'd loved Sarah with everything he had, and losing her had nearly destroyed him. But she'd taught him that love was worth the risk, worth the pain, worth everything. And now Olivia was teaching him that his heart had more room than he'd thought, that you could honor the past and still build a future. That catching someone when they fell didn't mean you'd fall yourself. Sometimes it meant you both learned to fly. The following weeks settled into a rhythm that felt increasingly like forever. Olivia rearranged her schedule to be home for dinner most nights. Henry started keeping a toothbrush and clean clothes at her place for mornings after she stayed over. Lucas started saying "we" when he talked about family activities, including Olivia without question. They carved pumpkins together on Olivia's patio, Lucas getting more seeds in his hair than in the bowl, while Olivia laughed and helped him scoop. They raked leaves into massive piles for jumping, then spent an hour re-raking them while Lucas protested. They watched Halloween movies curled up on the couch, Lucas between them, completely at peace. It was ordinary and domestic and absolutely nothing like Olivia's old life, and she loved every minute of it. But there were hard moments, too. Nights when work overwhelmed her and she snapped at Henry over something small. Mornings when Henry woke from dreams of Sarah and needed space that Olivia didn't know how to give. Times when Lucas asked innocent questions about his mom that left them all a little raw. They worked through it, fought sometimes, made up every time, learned each other's triggers and soft spots and the best ways to apologize. This is what I was scared of, Olivia admitted one night after a fight about her working through a dinner she'd promised to attend. That I'd mess this up by being exactly who I am. You're not messing anything up. We're just figuring out how to fit our lives together. Henry pulled her close despite her resistance. And that takes time, takes mistakes, takes learning how to fight fair and love harder. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I, but we're doing it anyway. That's what matters. November arrived with early darkness and cold rain. The oak tree stood bare against gray skies, its leaves scattered across both their yards. One Saturday morning, Henry was cleaning gutters when he noticed Olivia on her patio with her laptop, wrapped in blankets against the chill. You're working outside because why? He called over. I like the fresh air. Helps me think. It's 40 degrees. I have blankets. Henry shook his head, smiling, and went back to clearing leaves and debris. An hour later, he knocked on her back door with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Break time. She accepted gratefully, wrapping her hands around the mug. You're going to spoil me. That's the plan. He sat beside her, surveying her work setup. Big case? Merger negotiation. The acquiring company keeps changing terms at the last minute. It's exhausting. Can you walk away? Theoretically. But my client really wants this deal. What do you want? Olivia considered the question. 6 months ago, I would have said I wanted to win at any cost. Now, I want to get home for dinner. I want to help Lucas with his homework. I want to fall asleep next to you instead of alone in my office at midnight. So tell them that. Tell my client I'd rather have dinner than close their deal. Tell them you'll get them the best deal possible within reasonable working hours. Set the boundary. If they can't respect it, they're not the right client. Olivia stared at him. That's actually brilliant. I have my moments. She set her mug down and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like chocolate and gratitude. Thank you. For what? For reminding me I get to choose how I spend my life, nobody else. Anytime. He stood, pulling her up with him. Now come inside before you freeze to death, proving a point. They spent the rest of the day inside Olivia's house, her working at the dining table while Henry refinished the antique dresser she'd bought at an estate sale. They moved around each other easily, comfortable in the shared space, and when Lucas came home from his friend's house later, he found them both there and accepted it as completely normal. This was their life now, blended and imperfect and absolutely real. That evening, while Henry cooked dinner and Lucas set the table in his haphazard 6-year-old way, Olivia watched them from the doorway and felt something settle deep in her chest. This was what she'd been missing all those years climbing corporate ladders and winning cases and building a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt hollow from within. This warmth and noise and chaotic love. This sense of belonging to something bigger than herself. This knowledge that she could fall and someone would catch her, that she could mess up and be forgiven, that she could be exactly who she was and still be enough. "You okay?" Henry asked, noticing her watching. "Yeah," Olivia said, meaning it completely. "I'm perfect." But even as she said it, she felt the shadow of old fears creeping back in. The voice that whispered she didn't deserve this, that she'd ruin it eventually, that people like her didn't get happy endings. She pushed it down and focused on the present, on Henry's smile and Lucas's laughter and the smell of garlic bread filling the kitchen. She'd deal with the fear later. Right now, she had everything she'd ever wanted. She just had to figure out how to keep it. The fear she'd pushed down came roaring back the following Tuesday during a business dinner in downtown Portland. Olivia had negotiated the merger to acceptable terms, and her client had insisted on celebrating with the senior partners at a steakhouse that cost more per plate than Henry made in a week. She'd tried to decline, citing personal commitments, but her managing partner had made it clear that attendance was expected. So she'd texted Henry an apology, changed into the designer dress she kept in her office, and showed up to play the part she'd perfected over a decade of corporate law. The evening was exactly what she'd anticipated. Expensive wine, strategic conversation, veiled assessments of her commitment to the firm. Her managing partner, Richard Klein, held court at the head of the table, discussing expansion plans and partnership tracks with the casual authority of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. "Olivia's been invaluable on the Westbrook merger," Richard said, raising his glass toward her. "Thought we'd lost her to that Seattle firm, but she came to her senses." Polite laughter rippled around the table. Olivia smiled and said nothing. "Though I have to say," Richard continued, swirling his wine, "the new boundaries she's set around ours are interesting. Not exactly the partnership track mentality we're used to seeing." There it was. The challenge wrapped in collegiality. Olivia felt every eye at the table shift to her, waiting to see how she'd respond. The old version of herself would have defended her commitment immediately, would have assured them nothing had changed, would have sacrificed whatever she needed to prove her dedication. But she thought about Henry teaching Lucas to ride a bike in the driveway last weekend, about falling asleep on the couch during movie night, about Lucas telling her he loved her with absolute trust that she'd say it back. "I'm committed to excellent work for our clients," Olivia said evenly, "but I'm also committed to having a life outside this firm. The two aren't mutually exclusive." "Of course not," Richard agreed too quickly. "Though partnership does require a certain level of dedication, availability, the willingness to prioritize the firm's needs." "I understand, and if that's not compatible with the boundaries I've set, then perhaps partnership isn't the right path for me." The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Nobody challenged Richard Klein. Nobody suggested that maybe the firm's expectations were the problem, not their willingness to meet them. Richard's smile tightened just slightly. "Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. You're too valuable to lose." The conversation moved on, but Olivia felt the shift. She'd drawn a line, and everyone at that table knew it. The question was whether they'd respect it or wait for her to cave. She left the dinner early, claiming an early morning meeting, and drove home through rain that matched her mood. By the time she pulled into her driveway, it was nearly 11, and Henry's house was dark except for the porch light he always left on. She sat in her car for a long moment, still in her designer dress and heels, feeling the weight of two different lives pressing against each other. She could go inside her house, pour a glass of wine, and convince herself that tonight had been necessary, that playing the game was just part of success, that she could maintain both worlds without losing herself. Or she could be honest about what she was feeling. Olivia found herself walking to Henry's door before she'd consciously decided to move. She knocked softly, not wanting to wake Lucas, and waited. The door opened to reveal Henry in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair rumpled from the couch pillow, eyes immediately alert with concern. "Olivia? What's wrong?" "Can I come in?" "Of course." He stepped aside, ushering her into the warm quiet of his living room. "I thought you'd be out later." "I left early." She stood in the middle of his living room in her expensive dress and heels, feeling completely out of place. "I think I just ended my partnership track." "What happened?" She told him about the dinner, about Richard's comments, about the line she'd drawn that might cost her everything she'd worked for. Henry listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful, until she ran out of words and just stood there waiting for him to tell her she'd been foolish. Instead, he said, "I'm proud of you. For potentially destroying my career? For choosing yourself, for standing up for what matters." He moved closer but didn't touch her yet. "Was it the right call?" "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I just sabotaged everything out of fear." "Fear of what?" "That this won't last. That I'll sacrifice my career for you and Lucas, and then something will go wrong and I'll have nothing." The words came out in a rush, raw and honest. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize I'm not worth the trouble, for Lucas to decide he doesn't actually want me around, for this whole thing to fall apart." Henry cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Olivia, look at me. I love you. Not because you're perfect or successful or impressive, but because you're you, because you show up even when it's hard, because you let Lucas put stickers on your work laptop, because you're brave enough to want something more than just career success." "But what if I can't do this? What if I'm too broken from too many years of being alone?" "You're not broken. You're scared. There's a difference." He kissed her forehead gently. "And I'm scared too. I'm terrified that I'm asking too much of you. That you'll wake up one day and resent me for being the reason you didn't make partner. That you'll look at my small life and my modest house and wonder what you were thinking. I would never... See? We're both afraid of losing each other. That's not a sign we should run. That's a sign this matters." He pulled her into his arms, expensive dress and all. "We just have to decide if it matters enough to fight for it." Olivia buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the familiar smell of him, sawdust and laundry detergent and home. "I'm so tired of fighting alone." "Then stop. Let me fight with you. Let this be an us thing instead of a you thing." She pulled back to look at him. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. I just know you, and I know that you're stronger than you think and braver than you believe. You just need to trust yourself the way I trust you." "I want to. I'm just not sure I know how." "Then we'll figure it out together, same as everything else." He kissed her softly. "Starting with getting you out of that dress and into something comfortable. You look amazing, but you also look like you're about to snap that heel off and throw it." She laughed despite herself. "These shoes are torture devices. Go change. I'll make tea." 20 minutes later, Olivia was curled up on Henry's couch in borrowed sweatpants and one of his flannels, holding a mug of chamomile and feeling marginally more human. Henry sat beside her, close enough to touch, but giving her space to process. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly, "about why I'm like this." "You don't have to." "I want to." She stared into her tea. "My parents got divorced when I was 11. Brutal, ugly divorce that dragged on for 2 years. They used me as a weapon against each other. Tell your father he's a failure. Tell your mother she's selfish. I learned early that depending on people meant getting hurt, that the only person I could trust was myself. Olivia, so I became completely self-sufficient. Perfect grades, full scholarships, law school, career success. I didn't need anyone. Didn't let anyone in, because needing people had only ever brought pain." She looked at him finally. "And then you caught me falling out of a tree and ruined everything." Henry smiled slightly. "Sorry about that." "Don't be. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. Maybe ever." She set her mug down. "But that's exactly why I'm terrified. Because I need you now. I need Lucas. I need this life we're building. And needing people means they can hurt you. They can also love you, support you, catch you when you fall. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I'm still that 11-year-old girl watching her parents destroy each other. Henry was quiet for a moment, then said, My dad died when I was 14. Heart attack, completely unexpected. One day he was teaching me to change the oil in the truck. The next day he was gone. He took Olivia's hand. I learned that the people you love can disappear without warning, that life doesn't guarantee you anything. And when Sarah died, that lesson got reinforced in the worst possible way. How do you do it? How do you love again knowing it could end? Because the alternative is worse. Being alone, being safe, never risking your heart, that's not living. That's just existing. He squeezed her hand. Sarah and I had 8 years together. 8 years of laughter and fights and ordinary moments that added up to a life. And then I had 2 years of grief so deep I didn't think I'd survive it. But I would still choose those 8 years, even knowing how it ended. Because loving her made me better, made my life richer, made everything more. Olivia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What if I lose you? What if you don't? What if we get 50 years together? What if we grow old and watch Lucas grow up and have kids of his own? What if this is the beginning of something amazing and you miss it because you're too scared to jump? I'm so bad at jumping. You jumped out of a tree straight into my arms. You can do this too. She kissed him then, tasting salt and tea and the truth of what they were building together. When they broke apart, she whispered, I love you. I'm terrified and I'm probably going to mess this up 1,000 times, but I love you. I love you too, and you're absolutely going to mess it up. So will I. That's how this works. They fell asleep on the couch together, tangled up in blankets and each other. And when Lucas found them the next morning and climbed onto the couch between them, Olivia woke to find herself surrounded by the family she'd never known she wanted. The following week, Olivia had a meeting with Richard Klein to discuss her future at the firm. She prepared for it like she prepared for depositions. Facts organized, arguments ready, exit strategy planned. But when she walked into his office, he surprised her. I've been thinking about what you said at dinner, Richard began, leaning back in his expensive leather chair. About boundaries and life outside the firm. Sir, Let me finish. He held up a hand. I've been practicing law for 35 years. Made partner at 30, managing partner at 45. Built this firm into what it is today. And I've been divorced twice, barely know my own children, and realized last month that I couldn't name a single close friend. He met her eyes. I don't want that to be your story. Olivia blinked. I'm not sure I understand. I'm saying you were right. Partnership shouldn't require sacrificing everything else. So here's what I'm proposing. We create a new partnership track, one that values excellence and client service without demanding 80-hour weeks and constant availability. You'd be the test case. Why me? Because you're one of the best attorneys we have, and if we can't figure out how to keep you without burning you out, we don't deserve you. He slid a folder across his desk. Take a look. If the terms work for you, we move forward. If not, I'll write you a reference letter that'll get you hired anywhere in the country. Olivia opened the folder, scanning the proposed partnership structure. Billable hour requirements reduced by 30%. No expectation of weekend work except in genuine emergencies. Protection of personal time clearly outlined. It was everything she'd been afraid to ask for, handed to her without a fight. This is unprecedented, she said slowly. So is losing top talent because we refuse to evolve. The legal industry is changing. Firms that don't adapt will die. Richard's expression was almost gentle. And between you and me, I wish someone had offered me this 30 years ago. Maybe I'd know my kids' names. Olivia felt something unknot in her chest. Thank you. For this. For understanding. Thank your carpenter boyfriend. He's clearly good for you. She left Richard's office in a daze, the folder clutched in her hands, and sat in her car for 10 minutes just processing. She'd been prepared for a fight, had armor ready, arguments prepared, resignation letter drafted. Instead, she'd been given exactly what she needed without having to sacrifice anything. She called Henry immediately. Can you talk? Yeah, I'm just sanding a table. What's up? I think I just got everything I wanted. She explained about the meeting, about Richard's offer, about the new partnership track that would let her have both career and life. Henry listened quietly, and when she finished, he said simply, I'm proud of you. I didn't do anything. Richard just offered, You stood up for yourself. You drew boundaries. You showed them what you needed. That's doing something." His voice was warm with pride. "So what'd you tell him?" "That I'd review the terms and get back to him." "And?" "And I think I'm going to say yes." She felt tears prickling again, but happy ones this time. "I think I'm going to have it all. The career I worked for and the life I want. Is that allowed?" "It's absolutely allowed. You deserve it, Olivia. I couldn't have done this without you. Without you showing me that asking for what I need isn't weakness. You would have figured it out eventually. I just helped speed up the process. Always so humble. One of my best qualities." She heard the smile in his voice. "Come over tonight? Lucas wants to show you the diorama he made for school." "I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it." She hung up feeling lighter than she had in months, maybe years. The fear was still there, lurking around the edges, but it was manageable now, because she wasn't facing it alone anymore. That evening, she watched Lucas present his diorama with the same serious focus he brought to everything, explaining the ecosystem of the Pacific Northwest with pride. Henry sat beside her on the couch, his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth and thought about how much had changed since that September afternoon. She'd been stuck in a tree, too proud to ask for help, convinced that needing someone meant weakness. And Henry had stood beneath her and said simply, "Jump, I'll catch you." She jumped. He'd caught her. And somehow they'd both learned to fly. But even as she basked in the warmth of this moment, a small voice in her head whispered warnings. This was too good, too perfect. Something would go wrong eventually. It always did. She pushed the thought away and focused on Lucas's enthusiastic explanation of salmon migration patterns. She'd deal with her fears later. Right now, she had everything she'd ever wanted. She just had to learn to trust that she could keep it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of normalcy that felt almost surreal. Olivia signed the new partnership agreement and officially became the first attorney at her firm on the modified track. Her colleagues' reactions ranged from supportive to skeptical, but she found she didn't care as much as she would have before. She had proof that she could set boundaries and still be valued. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time in years, Olivia had somewhere to go. Henry invited her to spend the holiday with him and Lucas, and when she hesitated, worried about intruding on family traditions, Lucas had looked at her with his heartbreakingly earnest face and said, "But you are family." So she found herself in Henry's kitchen on Thanksgiving morning, attempting to help with the turkey while Lucas decorated paper placemats at the table. Karen was coming for dinner, along with Henry's brother from Seattle and his family. Olivia felt the familiar anxiety of meeting new people, of being evaluated and judged, but Henry kept touching her, a hand on her lower back, a kiss on her temple, reminding her she belonged. "Stop panicking," he murmured as he showed her how to baste the turkey. "They're going to love you." "How do you know?" "Because I love you. That's all they need to know." Karen arrived first, carrying homemade pies and a cautious expression that warmed when she saw Olivia helping in the kitchen. "Olivia, it's good to see you again." "You too, Karen. Thank you for the pies. They look amazing." "Sarah's recipe, apple and pumpkin." She set them on the counter carefully. She always made both because she could never decide which she preferred. There was a moment of silence, acknowledgement of the woman who'd once filled this role. Then Olivia said quietly, "Henry told me she was an incredible person. I wish I could have met her." Karen's eyes softened. "She would have liked you. She always said Henry needed someone who'd challenge him." She smiled slightly. "I think you fit that description." It wasn't exactly a blessing, but it was acceptance. Olivia felt some of her anxiety ease. Henry's brother Daniel arrived with his wife and 2 teenage daughters, bringing chaos and laughter and the easy teasing that came from siblings who genuinely liked each other. The house filled with noise and warmth, and Olivia found herself swept up in it, helping set the table, refereeing a debate about football teams between Lucas and his cousins, laughing at Daniel's stories about their childhood. Over dinner, surrounded by Henry's family, Olivia realized this was what she'd been missing her entire life. Not perfection or impressive achievements, but this. People who showed up for each other, who teased and laughed and forgave each other's flaws. Connection that didn't require performing or proving anything. She caught Henry watching her from across the table, his expression soft with something that looked like love and pride and contentment all mixed together. She smiled at him, and he mouthed, "I love you," when no one else was looking. After dinner, while the adults cleaned up and the kids played in the yard, Karen pulled Olivia aside. "I wanted to apologize for being cold when we first met." "You don't need to." "I do. I was protecting Sarah's memory, but I've realized that's not what she'd want." Karen's voice was thick with emotion. She'd want Henry to be happy. She'd want Lucas to have someone who loves him. And watching you with them today, I can see that you do. I love them both very much. I can tell. And that's all that matters. Karen squeezed her hand. "Welcome to the family, Olivia." Later that night, after everyone had left and Lucas had fallen asleep in a food coma on the couch, Henry and Olivia stood in the kitchen finishing the last of the dishes. She was washing, he was drying, and the comfortable silence felt like home. "Thank you for today," Olivia said quietly. "For including me, for making me feel like I belong." "You do belong. You're part of this family now." "It still feels surreal sometimes, like I'm going to wake up and none of this will be real." Henry set down his dish towel and turned her to face him. "It's real. I'm real. Lucas is real. This life we're building is real. You don't have to keep waiting for it to disappear." "I'm trying. It's just hard to trust good things after spending so long convinced I didn't deserve them." "You deserve everything good, Olivia. You just have to let yourself have it." She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and love and lingering fear into it. When they broke apart, she whispered, "I'm still scared." "I know, but you're doing it anyway. That's what bravery is." They finished the dishes together, then carried Lucas to bed before retreating to Henry's room. They made love slowly, tenderly, like they had all the time in the world. Afterward, Olivia lay in his arms, listening to his heartbeat and thinking about trust and family and the terrifying beauty of letting yourself need someone. She was falling asleep when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A work email marked urgent. She reached for it automatically, then stopped herself. Whatever it was could wait until morning. Right now, she had something more important. She turned the phone off, rolled back into Henry's arms, and let herself sleep. But the next morning, when she finally checked her messages, her stomach dropped. The email was from Richard. The Westbrook merger had fallen apart overnight. The acquiring company had discovered financial irregularities in the target company's books, irregularities that had been there all along but that Olivia's team had somehow missed in due diligence. The client was furious. Richard wanted her in the office immediately. She sat on the edge of Henry's bed, staring at her phone, feeling the foundations of her new life starting to crack. "What's wrong?" Henry asked, sitting up beside her. "Work. Big problem. I need to go." She dressed quickly, kissed him and a sleepy Lucas goodbye, and drove to the office with her heart pounding. This was bad. This was potentially career-ending bad. Missing something this significant in due diligence was inexcusable. Richard was waiting in the conference room with 3 other partners and the lead attorney from the Westbrook team. Everyone looked grim. "Talk me through your due diligence process," Richard said without preamble. For the next 2 hours, Olivia walked them through everything her team had done. Every document reviewed, every interview conducted, every analysis completed. The work had been thorough, careful, methodical. So how had they missed something this big? "The irregularities were buried in subsidiary accounts," the Westbrook attorney explained, "hidden behind legitimate transactions. We would have needed forensic accountants to catch them." "Did you recommend forensic review?" Richard asked Olivia. "Yes. The client declined, said it would delay the deal, and they were confident in the target company's representations." "Do we have that in writing?" "Email chain. I'll pull it." She did, forwarding the entire thread showing her multiple recommendations for additional review and the client's repeated insistence to move forward. The partners reviewed it in silence. Finally, Richard said, "This isn't on you, Olivia. You did your job. The client made a business decision against your advice." "But I should have pushed harder." "You advised them of the risks. They chose to accept those risks. That's on them, not you." He closed his laptop. "We'll manage the client relationship. You focus on damage control. See what can be salvaged." Olivia left the meeting exhausted and shaken. She'd done everything right, but it didn't feel like enough. The partnership track she'd just accepted suddenly felt fragile, contingent on success that could evaporate with one bad deal. She called Henry from her car. "Can I come over?" Of course. What happened? She told him everything, words tumbling out in a rush of anxiety and self-doubt. He listened quietly, then said, "Sounds like you did your job perfectly and the client ignored your advice. But I should have. Olivia, you gave them good counsel. You can't force people to listen. That's not your failure." "It feels like failure." "Because you're used to being able to control everything, but you can't control other people's decisions. You can only control your own." She knew he was right, but the fear was still there, whispering that this was the beginning of the end, that she'd ruined everything by choosing balance over total dedication, that she should have been more available, more aggressive, more willing to sacrifice everything for the client. "Come home," Henry said gently. "Let me take care of you." She did, and he met her at the door with Lucas, who immediately wrapped around her legs. "Ms. Olivia, are you sad? Dad says you had a hard day at work." "Yeah, buddy, I did. Want to see my new Lego set? It always makes me feel better." She let Lucas pull her inside, let Henry make her tea, let herself be comforted instead of retreating into isolation. And slowly, the panic receded. The situation was bad, but it wasn't catastrophic. She'd survived worse. She'd figure this out too. What she didn't say, what she couldn't quite articulate even to herself, was that part of her almost welcomed the crisis. Because if her career fell apart, if she lost the partnership, if everything went wrong, at least she'd have a reason for why this relationship wouldn't work. At least she wouldn't have to admit she was simply too broken to hold on to something good. The Westbrook situation consumed the next week. Olivia worked late every night, navigating client fury and attempting to salvage what she could from the collapsed merger. She came home exhausted, barely had energy for dinner, and fell asleep on Henry's couch more nights than not. He never complained, just covered her with blankets and let her sleep while he got Lucas ready for bed. But the crisis was taking its toll in ways that went deeper than exhaustion. Olivia could feel herself retreating, pulling back into old patterns of self-sufficiency and isolation. It was easier to focus on work than to sit with the fear that she was failing at everything that mattered. On Friday evening, she canceled dinner plans with Henry and Lucas for the third time that week. Henry's response was simple. "Okay, we'll be here when you're ready." That night, alone in her office at 9 p.m., Olivia stared at her computer screen without seeing it. The work was essentially done. The client relationship managed, the legal exposure minimized, the mess as cleaned up as it was going to get. But she couldn't make herself leave. Going home meant facing the truth she'd been avoiding all week. She was sabotaging this, deliberately creating distance because being close to Henry and Lucas terrified her more than any professional failure ever could. Her phone rang. Not Henry, her mother. Olivia almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hi, Mom." "Olivia, I was just thinking about you." Her mother's voice carried that careful cheerfulness that meant she wanted something. "How are you?" "Busy. Work's been intense." "It always is with you. That's why you're so successful." A pause. "I saw on LinkedIn that you made partner. Congratulations." "Modified partner, different track." "What does that mean?" "It means I set boundaries around work-life balance. Less hours, more personal time." Her mother's silence spoke volumes. Then carefully, "That's wonderful if it makes you happy. Though I hope you're not sacrificing your career for some man." There it was. The assumption that had shaped Olivia's entire life, that depending on someone meant weakness, that love was a distraction from what really mattered. "I'm not sacrificing anything," Olivia said quietly. "I'm building a life that includes more than just work." "Just be careful, sweetheart. Men come and go. Your career is forever." After they hung up, Olivia sat in the darkness of her office and thought about her mother's 3 divorces, her string of failed relationships, her beautiful empty house in San Francisco. She thought about how her mother had taught her that love was transactional, that needing people was dangerous, that the only person you could truly count on was yourself. And she realized she'd been living that lesson her entire life, until Henry had stood beneath a tree and caught her when she fell. She grabbed her keys and drove to his house through the December cold, her heart pounding. His lights were on, warm against the darkness, and she could see him through the kitchen window washing dishes while Lucas sat at the table doing homework. This was what her mother had never understood. that some things were worth more than corner offices and impressive titles. That love wasn't weakness, it was the bravest thing you could choose. She knocked, and Henry answered looking tired but unsurprised. "Hey, can we talk?" "Always." He called over his shoulder, "Lucas, finish your math. I'll be on the porch." They stepped outside into the cold, and Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. "I've been pulling away." "I know. You should be angry." "I'm not angry. I'm just waiting for you to figure out what you need." "How are you so patient with me?" "Because I love you. And because I understand that fear makes people do things that don't make sense." He leaned against the porch railing. "But I need you to be honest with me. Are you pulling away because work is overwhelming, or because you're scared of us?" Olivia felt tears burning in her eyes. "Both. The work stuff is real, but I'm also using it as an excuse to create distance, because being close to you terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I love you so much it hurts. Because Lucas has become my whole heart, and I don't know what I'd do if I lost either of you. Because my mother just reminded me of every lesson I learned growing up about why depending on people is dangerous." She was crying now, words tumbling out. "And I keep waiting for this to fall apart, because nothing good has ever lasted in my life, and I don't know how to trust that this will be different." Henry pulled her into his arms, holding her while she shook. "Olivia, look at me." He waited until she met his eyes. "I can't promise we'll never have problems. I can't promise this will always be easy. But I can promise that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not your parents. I'm not your exes. I'm me, and I choose you, every single day." "What if I keep messing up? What if I can't stop sabotaging this?" "Then we'll work through it. Together. That's what partnership means." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "But you have to stop running. You have to trust that when you fall, I'll catch you, every single time." "I'm so tired of being scared." "Then stop. Jump. I'm right here." Olivia looked at him, this kind, steady man who'd never asked her to be anything other than exactly who she was, and made a choice. She could keep protecting herself, keep building walls, keep proving that she didn't need anyone. Or she could be brave enough to need him anyway. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you and Lucas and this life we're building, and I don't want to run anymore." "Good. Because we love you too, and we're not letting you go." He kissed her softly. "Now come inside. Lucas has been asking for you all week, and I made too much pasta." They went inside together, and Lucas looked up from his homework with a grin that could light up the whole house. "Ms. Olivia, you're back. Can you help me with fractions? Dad's terrible at them." "I heard that," Henry called from the kitchen. "It's true, though." Olivia slid into the chair beside Lucas, looking at his worksheet. "Okay, buddy, show me what you've got." As Lucas explained his homework with 6-year-old logic that made absolutely no mathematical sense, Olivia felt something settle deep in her chest. This was home. Not her expensive house next door with its perfect furniture and empty rooms. This cramped kitchen with mismatched chairs and crayon drawings on the fridge, and a man who loved her enough to wait while she figured her life out. After dinner, after Lucas went to bed, Olivia and Henry sat on his back porch wrapped in blankets, watching the stars come out over the bare branches of the oak tree. "I need to tell you something else," Olivia said quietly. "About the partnership." "Okay. I'm thinking about turning it down." Henry turned to look at her. "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about what I actually want, and I don't think it's making partner at a big firm, even on a modified track. I think it's having more time, more freedom, more space to just live." She took a breath. "I'm thinking about going out on my own, opening a small practice, taking cases I actually care about instead of just mergers and acquisitions." "That's a big change." "I know, and it's terrifying, but also exciting in a way work hasn't been in years." She looked at him. "What do you think?" "I think you should do whatever makes you happy. I'll support you either way." "It would mean less money, at least at first. We'll figure it out." "You keep saying that, because it's true. We're a team now. Whatever challenges come, we handle them together." He pulled her closer. "Besides, I've been thinking about expanding my carpentry business, taking on bigger projects, maybe hiring an apprentice. If you're going to make big career changes, might as well join you." Olivia laughed. "We're both going to quit our stable jobs and bet on ourselves?" Sounds about right. He kissed her temple. We'll be broken happy. I can live with that. They sat in comfortable silence, and Olivia thought about how much had changed in 3 months. She'd gone from a woman who climbed trees alone to someone who had a partner, a family, a future that looked nothing like she'd planned, but everything like she'd secretly wanted. The following Monday, Olivia walked into Richard's office and declined the partnership. His expression was disappointed but not surprised. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You're one of the best attorneys I've worked with. Thank you, but I need to build something that's actually mine, something that fits the life I want instead of the life I thought I should want." "What will you do?" "Open my own practice, small business law, contracts, maybe some family law, things that actually matter to real people." Richard leaned back in his chair. "You know what? Good for you. I wish I'd had your courage at your age." He smiled. "Keep me posted. I'll send clients your way when I can." "Really? Really? Just because you're leaving doesn't mean we can't support each other." Olivia left his office feeling lighter than she had in years. She had 60 days to transition her cases, then she'd be on her own. It was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely right. That evening, she told Lucas and Henry over dinner. Lucas cheered and asked if this meant she'd have more time to help with his science projects. Henry raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To new beginnings." "To jumping without a net," Olivia added. "You have a net. You have us." The weeks leading up to Christmas were a whirlwind of transition. Olivia worked long hours closing out her cases while also setting up her new practice. Henry helped her convert her spare bedroom into an office, building custom shelves and a desk that fit the space perfectly. Lucas contributed drawings for the walls, declaring that every office needed art that makes you smile. Karen came for Christmas and stayed a week, and Olivia braced for awkwardness that never came. Instead, Karen helped her paint the office walls and shared stories about Sarah that made Henry laugh and cry in equal measure. She seemed at peace with Olivia's place in their lives, and one evening while they were cleaning up from dinner, she pulled Olivia aside. "I want to give you something." She handed Olivia a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. This was Sarah's. Her grandmother gave it to her when she graduated law school. "Karen, I can't—" "Yes, you can. Sarah would want you to have it. She always believed in supporting other women, in passing things forward." Karen's eyes were bright with tears. "You're not replacing her, Olivia. You're honoring her by loving her family, by being the partner Henry needs and the mother figure Lucas deserves. That's not replacement. That's continuation." Olivia hugged her, both of them crying, and when they pulled apart, Karen said, "Welcome to the family, officially." On Christmas morning, Olivia woke up in Henry's bed to find Lucas bouncing on the mattress announcing that Santa had come. They stumbled downstairs to find stockings stuffed and presents under the tree. And for the first time in her adult life, Olivia felt the pure joy of Christmas morning. Lucas tore through his presents with the enthusiasm of a 6-year-old who still believed in magic. Henry opened his gifts with quiet appreciation, especially the antique plane Olivia had found at an estate sale. And when Olivia opened the small box Henry gave her, she found a key. "What's this?" "Key to my house." Henry smiled. "Figured it was time you had one, so you can come and go whenever you want. Make this place yours too." "Henry, I know we haven't talked about moving in together officially, and I'm not pushing, but I want you to know you're always welcome here. Always." Olivia kissed him, not caring that Lucas was watching with interest and making gagging noises. "I love you." "Love you too." Lucas abandoned his toys to climb between them. "Does this mean Ms. Olivia is going to live here?" "Would you want that?" Henry asked carefully. "Yeah. Then she could make breakfast with us and help with homework every day, and we could be a real family." Olivia looked at Henry over Lucas's head. They'd been taking things slow, careful not to rush into decisions that would affect Lucas. But looking at this little boy who'd claimed her heart so completely, looking at this man who'd taught her what partnership really meant, she couldn't think of a single reason to wait. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "If it's okay with your dad." "More than okay." Henry pulled them both close. "More than okay." They spent the rest of Christmas Day together, just the three of them, building Lego sets and watching movies and making dinner that turned out only slightly burned. It was ordinary and perfect, and exactly what Olivia had been missing her entire life. That evening, after Lucas fell asleep surrounded by wrapping paper and new toys, Henry and Olivia stood at the kitchen window looking out at the oak tree. It was bare now, skeletal against the winter sky, but somehow still beautiful. "You think we're doing this right?" Olivia asked. "Moving in together after 3 months? Starting new businesses? Building a life this quickly?" "I think there's no right way to do this, just our way." Henry wrapped his arms around her from behind. "And our way seems to be working pretty well." "I'm still scared sometimes." "Good. Means you care." He kissed her neck. "But you don't run anymore. That's what matters." "That's because you catch me every time." "Always will." They stood together in the quiet warmth of the kitchen, and Olivia thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, trapped in a tree of her own making, too proud to ask for help, convinced that needing someone meant weakness. She'd fallen a long way since then, but she'd landed somewhere better than she could have imagined. The new year arrived with fresh possibilities. Olivia officially opened her practice in late January, working out of her home office and taking on clients who actually needed her help, instead of corporations playing financial games. The money was less, but the satisfaction was exponentially greater. Henry expanded his carpentry business, taking on a renovation project that would keep him busy for months. They moved Olivia's furniture into storage and officially combined their lives, navigating the small conflicts that came with sharing space. She learned that Henry left cabinet doors open, and he learned that she was incapable of putting dishes directly into the dishwasher. They fought about it, laughed about it, and figured it out together. Lucas adjusted to having Olivia around full-time with the easy acceptance of childhood, though he did try to negotiate later bedtimes since we have 2 adults now, so twice the chances of someone saying yes. It didn't work, but Olivia appreciated the logic. One Saturday morning in February, Olivia woke early and found herself drawn to the back window. The oak tree stood outlined against the dawn sky, still bare but showing the first hints of spring buds. She thought about that September afternoon, about climbing up alone and falling into Henry's arms. She'd been so afraid of needing someone, so convinced that independence was the only safe option. And then this quiet carpenter had shown her that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing when to let someone stand with you. "You okay?" Henry's voice was rough with sleep as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Perfect. Just thinking about how we started." "Regret climbing that tree yet?" "Not even a little bit." She turned in his arms. "Best fall of my life." "Want to know a secret?" He smiled. "I was terrified that day. Thought I might drop you. But you didn't." "No, and I never will." They kissed in the early morning light, and Olivia felt something shift inside her, the last piece of fear finally releasing its grip. She'd spent so long protecting herself from hurt that she'd protected herself from love too. But not anymore. She was done falling alone. In March, Henry proposed. Not with a grand gesture or elaborate plan, but on a random Tuesday evening while they were doing dishes. He'd just finished drying the last plate when he turned to her and said, "Marry me." Olivia almost dropped the pan she was washing. "What?" "Marry me. Make this permanent. Be my wife. Be Lucas's mom. Be my partner in everything." He wasn't even nervous, just certain. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and I don't see the point in waiting to make that official." "Henry, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. Take your time." "I'm not going anywhere." He kissed her softly. "But I wanted you to know. I'm all in, completely. Forever." Olivia stared at him, this man who'd been patient with her fears and steady through her doubts, and brave enough to catch her when she fell. She thought about all the reasons to say no, to wait, to be careful. And then she thought about Lucas sleeping upstairs, about the life they'd built together, about waking up every morning in his arms. "Yes." Henry blinked. "Yes?" "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to permanent. Yes to being Lucas's mom. Yes to forever." She laughed at his shocked expression. "You told me to jump, so I'm jumping." He picked her up and spun her around the kitchen, both of them laughing, And when Lucas appeared in his pajamas asking what all the noise was about, Henry set Olivia down and said, "We're getting married, buddy." Lucas processed this for exactly 3 seconds before launching himself at them both. "Does this mean Olivia is going to be my real mom?" Olivia knelt down to his level. "I'll never replace your first mom. She'll always be your mom, and that's important. But I'd be honored to be your mom too, if you want me to be. I want that." Lucas wrapped his arms around her neck. "I love you, Mom." The word hit her like a physical thing, breaking open something in her chest she hadn't known was still closed. She'd never thought she wanted kids, never imagined herself as a mother. But this child had claimed her heart so completely that she couldn't imagine life without him. "I love you too, buddy. So much." They stood there in the kitchen, the three of them wrapped around each other, and Olivia realized this was what family felt like. Not perfect or polished or impressive to the outside world, just real and messy and absolutely worth fighting for. The wedding happened in May, in the backyard under the oak tree that had started everything. It was small, just family and close friends, with Lucas serving as the ring bearer and Karen crying happy tears in the front row. Olivia wore a simple dress and carried wildflowers Lucas had helped pick that morning. When they exchanged vows, standing beneath new green leaves with spring sunshine filtering through the branches, Henry promised to catch her every time she fell. Olivia promised to jump, and Lucas, standing between them holding their rings, grinned like he'd orchestrated the whole thing. At the reception, Daniel gave a toast about how Henry had finally found someone stubborn enough to match him. Karen spoke about Sarah's belief that love multiplied rather than divided, and how grateful she was that Henry had found it again. And Lucas stood on a chair and announced to everyone that he had the best family in the whole world. Later, after the guests had left and Lucas had fallen asleep in his room, exhausted from celebration, Henry and Olivia stood under the oak tree one more time. Olivia had changed into jeans and one of Henry's flannels, her hair loose around her shoulders, her feet bare in the grass. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" she asked, looking up at the branches above them. "Jump, I'll catch you." "I was so scared." "I know, but you caught me anyway. Always will." He pulled her close. "Your turn now." "My turn for what?" "To jump. One more time." Olivia looked at him, confused, then followed his gaze up. He'd tied a rope swing to one of the lower branches, sturdy and safe, hanging just above the ground. "When did you do this?" "This morning, before the ceremony. Thought we should have a swing. For Lucas, for us, for whoever comes next." He gestured toward it. "So, you gonna jump?" Olivia climbed onto the swing, her heart full to bursting. Henry pulled her back, then let go, and she flew forward into the air, laughing like a child. Higher and higher, until she felt weightless and free and absolutely certain that this was where she belonged. When the swing came back, Henry caught her easily, stopping her momentum with his hands on her waist. She wrapped her legs around him and kissed him with all the love and gratitude and joy she'd learned to feel. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what?" "For standing underneath. For being patient. For teaching me that falling doesn't have to mean breaking." She touched his face gently. "For showing me what home feels like. Thank you for jumping, for trusting me, for choosing this life even though it scared you." He kissed her again. "For being brave enough to let me love you." They stood there under the oak tree as the sun set, wrapped around each other, and Olivia thought about how far she'd come. From a woman stuck in a tree too proud to ask for help, to a wife and mother building a life she'd never planned but couldn't imagine living without. She'd learned that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing when to reach for someone's hand, about trusting someone to catch you when you fall, about building something together that was stronger than anything you could build alone. And she'd learned that love wasn't about being perfect or never being afraid. It was about showing up anyway, about choosing someone every day, about jumping even when the ground seemed far away because you trusted they'd be there to catch you. Henry had caught her that September afternoon, and in doing so, he'd taught her how to fly. Now they'd spend the rest of their lives catching each other, taking turns being brave, building a home under the oak tree that had brought them together. Olivia looked up at the branches spreading above them, strong and steady and full of new life, and smiled. She wasn't afraid of falling anymore, because she knew, deep in her bones where fear used to live, that she'd never have to land alone again. Somewhere in the house, Lucas stirred in his sleep, safe and loved and surrounded by family. In the distance, neighbors' lights flickered on against the gathering darkness, and under the ancient oak tree, Henry and Olivia stood together in the life they'd chosen, the life they'd built, the life they'd be brave enough to keep building every single day. No more climbing alone. No more falling without someone to catch you. Just two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and decided that love was worth the leap. And it was. It absolutely was.